Midlands 103.
Dr. Niall Aughney is Director of Digitisation, Industrial Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 at the Irish Manufacturing Research Facility in Mullingar. They're a research facility and they've recently partnered up with Vodafone to create a private 5G network that's going to be used to explore Industry 4.0 technologies. I'm delighted to be joined by Niall now, and I'm going to give him, as the old saying used to go, an opener for 10. Niall, can you give us a brief synopsis for the listeners of what the Industrial Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 actually is?
Sure. Good evening, Ronan. In a line, the Industrial Internet of Things is connecting physical devices from an industrial factory to the cloud. So it's any physical object within a factory, any manufacturing device. IoT is about connecting that to a cloud. Industry 4 is about the advancement of automation and technology within an industrial setting, and about using that technology to acquire data from those assets and deliver additional value to the factory and to the management team. So that's IoT and Industry 4.
Summed up as well, I think, and people are probably beginning to get more familiar and reasonably familiar with the terms as well. And I heard it put like that in one of the first kind of industrial waves, you had factories cropping up, right beside the resources, be it beside mines or wherever. Now, of course, Industry 4.0 changes that, and that you can have a factory on one side of the world, a design team on the other, and both working together. I think you're going to give us some examples later on too. So I suppose take us, the IMR, this partnership that was announced with Vodafone about creating the virtual private network. What does that do for the IMR?
So a big part of what IMR does is we look ahead 3 to 5 years to identify technologies and capabilities coming onto the market, which we believe will have a meaningful impact to manufacturing. So IMR identified 5G and the evolution of 5G as potentially a very important and possible game-changer technology for factories. And what we've done is we've made a decision late last year to invest in this infrastructure in Mullingar, so we can work with companies to understand how that technology can be used to improve their performance and to improve their competitiveness. And
how did a partnership with Vodafone come about initially?
So we put out a tender to interested parties late last year to create a 5G mobile private network in Mullingar, and Vodafone were successful in that tender. And the relationship we have now with them is we have from a telecommunications perspective, we've got a partner who has a deep sectoral knowledge in the technology. We've also brought in Ericsson, who are supporting us with the hardware for the MPN, and that plays to our strength in that we can apply that then with our deep sector knowledge, which is around manufacturing. So that's how the relationship started and how it's developing.
And the primary use then to explore new technologies and emerging technologies associated with Industry 4.0, how will you go about actually using that in IMR, and maybe what are the initial objectives that you'd like to achieve from that?
Sure. So, it is a new technology, and it's been touted as being designed with, specific advantages, such, in terms of IoT connectivity and machine-to-machine communication. So what we intend to do is identify industrial use cases where 5G can add a quantifiable value to problems industry are facing today. We have the opportunity to provide a unique factory test bed, which we have in Mullingar, for customers to evaluate, their own use cases, supported by our IoT, advanced manufacturing and data analytics teams, which are based in Mullingar. And we intend to offer training in the technology to allow customers to better understand how this technology may fit into their operations. And we're already working with some customers on tetherless AR/VR applications for controlling factory automation, warehouse stock management, and the control of AGVs. So we're trying to present a practical avenue for companies to understand this prior to any future investments or decisions that they need to make. So it's part of our creed to demystify, de-risk and deliver on technology for Irish manufacturing.
And give some local manufacturing or indeed Irish manufacturing companies access to this technology to at least allow them to carry out a feasibility or potentially, plan to use the technology down the line. Is there any examples of how 5G technology is being used either in Ireland or globally at present?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a range of applications where 5G is already making an impact, specifically within manufacturing environments. So it well, I mean, at the start, I mean, it's another wireless connectivity option that companies can avail of to support their own operations in terms of getting insights from different assets. So with this, you can create, dashboards for predictive maintenance. It will support, accurate forecasting, cycle time optimization. It will support guided operations in terms of virtual inspections, applications like that. Health and safety, very important in terms of, proximity measurements of mobile assets within factory floors. It can be used for facilities modeling and monitoring, remote device management of systems that may be monitoring the energy or environment, which, you may not even be within, say a wired or powered factory setting. They may be, remote assets, asset tracking, and a big area is industrial robotics. So within industrial robotics, this technology will enable remote monitoring and management and remote control of those systems. So we'll be testing out, concepts of can you remotely monitor and control a robot, across a factory from the operator maybe on one side of a factory or one side of a site, or maybe even be in a different building. So trying to understand what these are the types of applications that 5G are used for right now, and some of those we'll be focusing on in IMR.
And does it also open up opportunities? There are things like almost like a remote or a virtual validation of a process, so away from maybe the original factory floor, but it can be done in basically in virtual reality.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the applications that the technology will support is digital twins. So if you can virtualize a physical asset, monitoring specific parameters that reflect the condition or the behaviour of that asset or that factory asset, you can create what we call a digital twin of that, sort of digital representation of the performance of that asset, and that could be developed using 5G MPN.
So what, in terms of what it can bring to the IMR and to the Mullingar facility as well, and what it means for Ireland as a whole. I mean, we're well renowned and we're well respected worldwide for our kind of entrepreneurship and our innovation characteristics. What can this do for us, I suppose, as a nation in terms of really putting our flag up there and saying, this is the place it's happening in?
So, I mean, this is one of a number of what we would call Industry 4 technologies that are becoming more mainstream within manufacturing environments. And we tend to look at technology in three particular areas. Obviously, first is the technology and the pros and cons of the technology, but also what are the skills required within an industry or a factory setting, to utilize that technology. And then we also look at it in terms of, organizational capability, the company that, owns the factory. How does the organization need to change to absorb this technology, utilize it, and get the maximum benefit out of it? So this would be one of a number of technologies where we work with our industrial customers to enable them, across those three areas, to develop the capabilities to utilize this type of technology and other types of technology. So it's just another tool in the toolbox of Irish industry to stay competitive and to stay ahead of the game. It's all about, identifying the right applications for these technology, developing the right skills to enable workers to use the technology, and then helping companies to embrace that and bring it into their operations and make it mainstream so they can stay competitive and stay closer to their customers.
And one can only expect that'll probably happen sooner rather than later, such as the scale of developments from a technological perspective. But Niall, thank you so much for giving us that update as well. It's a fantastic project for the Midlands area, for Mullingar, and indeed for Ireland in general. Thank you very much for that this evening. Dr. Niall Aughney there, he's Director of Digitisation, Industrial Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 at Irish Manufacturing Research. So there you go, Industry 4.0. You know, you've probably heard of it in the past. It's the way things are going to, and really it's positioning the country in its best position to deliver to deliver a more, to give more competitive advantage, and to really set our stall and retain our position that we have with so many big multinationals, and right down to some fantastic SMEs and local indigenous companies that are heavily involved in the technology sector, the manufacturing sectors and so on. Lots happening out there, and great news story indeed.